In the beginning, there was only dust, cosmic debris scattered across the void, colliding, compressing, igniting. 4.5 billion years ago, in an unremarkable corner of an unremarkable galaxy, a planet formed. We call it Earth, and from the moment of its birth it began to break the rules, not loudly, not obviously, but consistently, persistently, in ways that scientists, even today, struggle to explain. This is not a story about mysteries solved. This is a story about mysteries that deepen the more we look, about evidence that shouldn't exist, structures that shouldn't stand, phenomena that shouldn't occur, about a planet that seems almost designed to defy our understanding. 100 times, Earth has presented us with anomalies, contradictions, impossibilities, and each time we've had to ask the same uncomfortable question. What if everything we think we know about our past, our planet, and our place in the cosmos is incomplete? This is not speculation for its own sake. This is evidence. Hard, physical, undeniable evidence that forces us to reconsider the very foundations of human history, planetary science, and the nature of intelligence itself. Welcome to the edge of knowledge, where science meets mystery, where the observable world defies explanation, where Earth itself becomes the greatest puzzle we've ever tried to solve. Let's begin. The first defiance is written in stone, literally. In 1872, a mining engineer named Josiah Spurr was working in California when he discovered something that shouldn't exist. A nail, embedded in a piece of quartz. The quartz was dated to the Cretaceous period, 65 million years old. But nails are human artifacts, and humans, according to every established timeline, only appeared 300,000 years ago. The nail was dismissed, called a hoax, filed away and forgotten. But it wasn't alone. In 1844, Scottish physicist Sir David Brewster reported a similar discovery, an iron nail embedded in a sandstone block from a quarry in Kingoody, Scotland. The sandstone was dated to 360 million years old, the Devonian period, long before dinosaurs, long before anything recognisable as complex life. Again, dismissed and forgotten. But the evidence didn't stop accumulating. In 1851, workers at a Massachusetts mine cracked open a rock and found a metallic bell-shaped vessel inside. The rock was Precambrian, over 500 million years old. The vessel was ornate, decorated with floral patterns. It suggested not just technology, but art, culture and intelligence. In 1885, a coal mine in Austria yielded a metal cube with perfectly machined grooves. The coal was dated to the Tertiary period, 60 million years old. In 1928, a coal miner in Oklahoma discovered an iron pot embedded in coal, dated to 300 million years old. These are not isolated incidents. They are a pattern, a geological record that refuses to align with our understanding of human history. And the scientific community has responded in one of two ways. Either these artifacts are modern contamination, objects that somehow fell into older strata and were mistakenly dated, or they are anomalies so profound that acknowledging them would require rewriting everything we know about the development of life, technology, and civilization on Earth. But let's assume for a moment that the dates are correct, that these objects are as old as the rock that contained them. What does that mean? It means intelligence existed on this planet long before us. Not just intelligence, technology, manufacturing, metallurgy, complex culture. It means we are not the first, and if we are not the first, then what happened to those who came before? Where did they go? What destroyed them? And most urgently, are we following the same path? Deep time is humbling. It erases certainty. It turns history into hypothesis. Consider this. Modern humans have existed for 300,000 years. Recorded history covers roughly 5,000 years. That's 1.6% of our existence. The remaining 98.4% is prehistory. A blank page, a void, a silence. And in that silence, entire civilizations could have risen and fallen. Technologies could have been developed and lost. Knowledge could have been accumulated and erased. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of what we build doesn't last. Wood rots, metal corrodes, concrete crumbles. Even our proudest structures, skyscrapers, bridges, monuments would be unrecognizable rubble within 10,000 years. Within 100,000 years, they'd be dust. Within 1,000,000 years, they'd be geological noise. So if a technological civilization existed on Earth 1,000,000 years ago, What evidence would remain? Very little. Traces, maybe. Anomalies. Objects embedded in rock, defying our timelines, forcing us to ask questions we're not ready to answer. And that's just one category of impossibility. Because the Earth doesn't just challenge us with out-of-place artifacts, it challenges us with out-of-place structures. In 1800 BC, someone moved a stone weighing 1,050 tons. Not rolled it, not dragged it, moved it, precisely, carefully, and placed it as part of a foundation at Baalbek, Lebanon. This stone, known as the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, is one of the largest quarried and moved stones in human history, and no one knows how it was done. Modern cranes can lift around 20,000 tons, but they're massive, complex machines requiring steel, hydraulics, computer, controls, and stable ground. Ancient civilizations had none of this, and yet they moved stones that modern engineers struggle to conceptualize moving. At Baalbek, 3 massive stones, each weighing over 800 tons, form the foundation of the Temple of Jupiter. They fit together so precisely that a knife blade can't slip between them. No mortar, no gaps, just perfect, impossible joinery. How? The standard explanation involves ramps, rollers, massive labour forces and decades of work. But the math doesn't add up. Moving an 800-ton stone on wooden rollers would require thousands of workers, perfectly synchronised, on terrain that can't compress or deform under that weight. And the stones would need to be moved uphill over uneven ground and positioned with millimetre precision. It's theoretically possible, but practically implausible, and Baalbek is not alone. At Sacsayhuaman, Peru, massive stones weighing up to 200 tons are fitted together so tightly that a piece of paper can't slide between them. The stones are irregularly shaped with complex interlocking joints that would require precise 3-dimensional planning and cutting. No metal tools, no wheels, no modern surveying equipment, and yet it exists. At Pumapunku, Bolivia, stones are cut with such precision that they appear machine-tooled. Perfectly flat surfaces, perfect right angles, identical dimensions across multiple blocks, suggesting standardized manufacturing. The stones are made of diorite and granite, materials so hard that they can only be cut with diamond-tipped tools. The Inca didn't have diamond-tipped tools, they didn't even have iron. So how? At Göbekli Tepe, Turkey, massive T-shaped pillars were carved, moved and erected 11,600 years ago. This predates agriculture, it predates pottery, it predates metallurgy. According to established history, the people who built Göbekli Tepe were hunter-gatherers, nomadic tribes with stone tools and no concept of large-scale construction. And yet, they built a complex, astronomically aligned temple using stones weighing up to 20 tons, decorated with intricate carvings of animals, symbols, and abstract patterns. Why? How? The conventional explanation is that religion motivated them, that spiritual belief can drive extraordinary feats of construction. And perhaps that's true, but it doesn't explain the precision, the planning, the logistics. It doesn't explain how people with no written language, no formal mathematics, no engineering tradition, somehow coordinated the quarrying, transport, carving, and erection of massive stones in a configuration that suggests deep knowledge of geometry and astronomy, unless they weren't starting from scratch, unless they inherited knowledge, techniques, tools, unless they were remembering something, not inventing it. This is where the evidence begins to whisper a disturbing possibility, that human civilization is not a linear progression from primitive to advanced, but a cycle, that we have risen before, that we have fallen before, and that the knowledge we think we're discovering for the first time may actually be knowledge we're rediscovering. Because here's another impossibility, the alignment. Göbekli Tepe is aligned to true north within a fraction of a degree. So is the Great Pyramid of Giza, so are Teotihuacan, Angkor Wat, and Stonehenge. These structures, built by different cultures separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years, share a common precision that requires advanced understanding of astronomy, geometry, and the Earth's rotation. Coincidence? Perhaps. But consider this. The Great Pyramids, dimensions encode mathematical constants that weren't officially discovered until centuries later. The ratio of its height to its base perimeter approximates the ratio of a circle's radius to its circumference, pi. The structure's orientation aligns with true north more accurately than the Greenwich Observatory. Its internal chambers align with specific stars in Orion's belt, and the design incorporates the golden ratio, the speed of light, and the mean radius of the Earth. All of this in a structure supposedly built by a Bronze Age civilization using copper tools and ramps. The math doesn't just strain credibility, it shatters it. And the more we study these structures, the more questions emerge. Why do ancient sites around the world share similar architectural features? Massive polygonal masonry, precise astronomical alignments, encoded mathematical constants. Despite having no known contact with each other, why do structures thousands of years old demonstrate construction techniques we can barely replicate today? And why, in almost every case, do the structures attributed to primitive cultures show greater precision and sophistication than the structures built by their supposedly more advanced successors? This is the pattern, and it's a pattern that suggests something profound. Either ancient civilizations were far more advanced than we've been willing to admit, or they had help. Not divine help, not mythological help. Help from those who came before, from a previous cycle, from a lost chapter of human history that we're only now beginning to glimpse. But the Earth's defiances don't stop at the physical. They extend into the realm of consciousness itself. In 1975, researchers at Princeton University began a decades-long experiment called the Global Consciousness Project. The premise was simple, almost absurd. Measure random number generators around the world to see if human consciousness, at a collective level, could influence randomness. For years, the data was noise, pure statistical randomness as expected. But then something changed. On September 11, 2001, hours before the first plane hit the World Trade Center, the random number generators began showing patterns, deviations from randomness that were statistically significant, as if the collective unconscious of humanity was reacting to an event that hadn't happened yet. This wasn't the first time. Similar deviations had occurred during Princess Diana's funeral, during the O.J. Simpson verdict, during major global events that captured collective attention. The implication is staggering. Consciousness is not confined to individual brains, it's networked, connected, and under certain conditions it can influence physical systems. This is not mysticism, this is data. Repeatable, measurable, peer-reviewed data. And it raises a question that science has been avoiding for centuries. What is consciousness? We know it emerges from the brain. We know it involves neurons, synapses, electrochemical signals, but we don't know how. We don't know why a collection of cells produces the subjective experience of being. We don't know how matter becomes aware of itself, and we certainly don't know if consciousness is limited to biological organisms. Because if consciousness can influence random number generators, if it can reach across space and affect physical systems, then it's not just a byproduct of biology. It's a fundamental aspect of reality, a field, a force, something that permeates the universe. And if that's true, then consciousness might predate humanity. It might predate Earth. It might be something we tap into, not something we create. Ancient cultures understood this. They spoke of universal mind, collective consciousness, the Akashic records, a cosmic library of all knowledge, all experience, all thought, accessible to those who knew how to reach it. Modern science dismissed these ideas as metaphor, mythology, wishful thinking. But what if they weren't? What if ancient mystics, shamans and philosophers were describing something real, something that exists beyond individual minds? A field of consciousness that connects all living things, all thinking things across space and time. This is not wild speculation. This is physics. Quantum mechanics has shown that particles can be entangled, connected in such a way that measuring one instantly affects the other, regardless of distance. Einstein called it spooky action at distance. He hated it. It violated his understanding of reality. But it's real, proven, measurable. And if particles can be entangled, why not minds? On September 11th, 2001, hours before the first plane hit the World Trade Center, the random number generators began showing patterns, deviations from randomness that were statistically significant, as if the collective unconscious of humanity was reacting to an event that hadn't happened yet. This wasn't the first time. Similar deviations had occurred during Princess Diana's funeral, during the O.J. Simpson verdict, during major global events that captured collective attention. The implication is staggering. Consciousness is not confined to individual brains. It's networked, connected, and under certain conditions, it can influence physical systems. This is not mysticism. This is data. Repeatable, measurable, peer-reviewed data. And it raises a question that science has been avoiding for centuries. What is consciousness? We know it emerges from the brain. We know it involves neurons, synapses, electrochemical signals. But we don't know how, we don't know why a collection of cells produces the subjective experience of being. We don't know how matter becomes aware of itself. And we certainly don't know if consciousness is limited to biological organisms. Because if consciousness can influence random number generators, if it can reach across space and affect physical systems, then it's not just a byproduct of biology. It's a fundamental aspect of reality, a field, a force, something that permeates the universe. And if that's true, then consciousness might predate humanity. It might predate Earth. It might be something we tap into, not something we create. Ancient cultures understood this. They spoke of universal mind, collective consciousness, the Akashic records, a cosmic library of all knowledge, all experience, all thought, accessible to those who knew how to reach it. Modern science dismissed these ideas as metaphor, mythology, wishful thinking. But what if they weren't? What if ancient mystics, shamans, and philosophers were describing something real, something that exists beyond individual minds? A field of consciousness that connects all living things, all thinking things, across space and time. This is not wild speculation. This is physics. Quantum mechanics has shown that particles can be entangled, connected in such a way that measuring one instantly affects the other, regardless of distance. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. He hated it. It violated his understanding of reality. But it's real, proven, measurable. And if particles can be entangled, why not minds? Studies in telepathy, remote viewing and precognition have produced results that, while controversial, are statistically significant. Far above chance. Far above what should be possible if consciousness were purely local, purely biological. And ancient structures suggest that past civilizations understood this. The Great Pyramid, for example, was not just a tomb. Its internal chambers create acoustic resonances at specific frequencies that match the resonant frequency of the Earth itself, and frequencies that, when experienced by the human brain, induce altered states of consciousness. Was this intentional? Was the pyramid designed as a consciousness technology? A tool for accessing states of awareness beyond ordinary perception? The evidence suggests yes, because the pyramid is not alone. Similar acoustic properties have been found in chambers at Newgrange Island, Hypergeum of Halsaflieni, Malta, and Chavinda-Huantar, Peru. These sites, separated by oceans and millennia, all share a common feature. They manipulate sound in ways that affect human consciousness. Why? Perhaps because those who built them understood something we're only now rediscovering, that consciousness is not confined to the skull, that it can be expanded, accessed, influenced by the right conditions, sound, geometry, alignment with celestial patterns. And if ancient cultures possessed this knowledge, where did they get it? Did they discover it through trial and error over thousands of years, or did they inherit it? This is where the evidence becomes almost too strange to accept, because there are accounts, scattered across cultures, across continents, of beings who brought knowledge, beings who taught agriculture, astronomy, mathematics, and medicine, beings described as gods but who behave like teachers, like scientists, like representatives of a more advanced civilization. The Sumerians spoke of the Anunnaki, the Egyptians spoke of the Neteru, the Maya spoke of Kukulkan, the Dogon tribe of Mali spoke of the Nommo, beings from the star Sirius who taught them about astronomy, including knowledge of Sirius B, a white dwarf star invisible to the naked eye, which wasn't confirmed by modern science until 1970. How did the Dogon know? The standard explanation: contamination. European astronomers visited the region, shared their knowledge, and the Dogon incorporated it into their mythology. But that explanation doesn't account for the fact that the Dogon had detailed drawings and oral traditions about Sirius B dating back centuries before any European contact. So either they guessed, with stunning accuracy, or they were told. And if they were told, by whom? This is where science meets the unthinkable, where evidence meets implication, where the past whispers of a future we're not prepared to imagine. Because if consciousness is a field, and if that field can be accessed, manipulated, and transmitted, then knowledge doesn't die with civilizations. It persists, encoded, preserved, waiting to be rediscovered. And Earth, with its geological anomalies, its architectural impossibilities, its consciousness-altering structures, might not just be a planet, it might be a library. In 1900, divers off the coast of the Greek island Antikythera discovered a shipwreck. Among the artifacts recovered was a corroded lump of bronze and wood. For decades, it sat in a museum, dismissed as debris. Then, in 1951, a researcher noticed gears inside. The lump was cleaned, studied, x-rayed, and what emerged defied every assumption about ancient technology. It was a computer, a mechanical computer built around 100 BC, capable of predicting astronomical positions, solar eclipses, lunar phases, planetary movements, with stunning accuracy. It contained over 30 interlocking bronze gears, differential gearing, a technology not seen again until the 16th century, and inscriptions detailing its operation. No other artifact like it exists in the historical record. It's as if someone dropped a smartphone into the Bronze Age. Where did the knowledge to build it come from? The Greeks of that era were brilliant, yes. They had philosophers, mathematicians, astronomers. But the Antikythera mechanism suggests something more. It suggests a technological tradition, an engineering lineage, that we have no record of. It suggests that ancient civilizations possess technologies we've lost, and the mechanism is not alone. In 1936, a German archaeologist named Wilhelm König was working in Iraq when he discovered clay jars containing copper cylinders and iron rods, sealed with asphalt. When tested, the jars produced an electric current. They were batteries, built 2,000 years ago. Batteries require knowledge of electrochemistry. The Baghdad batteries suggest that ancient Mesopotamians understood electrical principles long before Volta and Franklin. What did they use them for? Electroplating, perhaps? Lighting? Communication? We don't know, because the knowledge was lost. In Egypt, the Temple of Dendera contains a relief that, to modern eyes, looks unsettlingly like a light bulb. A large, oblong object held by insulated pillars with a serpent-like filament inside and cable extending from its base. Egyptologists dismiss it as symbolic, a representation of a lotus flower or a mythological scene, but electrical engineers who've studied the relief disagree. They see a design consistent with a Crookes tube, a type of early cathode ray tube used to generate light. Did the ancient Egyptians have electric lighting? It seems impossible. And yet, if they didn't, why do tomb paintings deep inside pyramids, places with no evidence of torch soot, depict such intricate, colourful detail? How did artists see in total darkness? The standard explanation: mirrors, reflecting sunlight from the entrance deep into the chambers. But the math doesn't work. Light loses intensity rapidly. To illuminate a chamber 100 meters inside a pyramid would require an impossible array of perfectly positioned mirrors. So either they worked in darkness, painting blindly with perfect accuracy, or they had light. And if they had light, they had technology. This is the uncomfortable edge where evidence meets resistance, where observation meets orthodoxy, where what we see conflicts with what we've been taught. Because acknowledging ancient technology means acknowledging ancient knowledge. And acknowledging ancient knowledge means acknowledging that our understanding of human history, our carefully constructed timeline of progress, is incomplete. Possibly wrong. But the evidence doesn't stop at devices and reliefs. It extends to knowledge itself. The Piri-Reis map, created in 1513, depicts the coastline of Antarctica with stunning accuracy, including details of the land beneath the ice, details that wouldn't be confirmed until the 1950s using ground-penetrating radar. How did a 16th century Turkish admiral have access to that information? The map includes a note stating that it was based on older source maps, some dating back to the time of Alexander the Great or earlier, but Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820, and the land beneath the ice hasn't been ice-free for at least 6,000 years. So either Piri-Reis had access to maps created by a civilization that existed before the last ice age, or the map is a forgery, a hoax. But the map has been authenticated by multiple institutions, including the US Navy Hydrographic Office, which confirmed in 1960 that the map's depiction of Antarctica is accurate to a degree that shouldn't be possible without modern surveying equipment. So we're left with a paradox. The map is real. The information is accurate. But according to our understanding of history, the information shouldn't exist. This is the pattern repeating. Evidence that shouldn't exist but does. Structures that shouldn't stand but do. Knowledge that shouldn't have been possessed but was. And it forces a question we've been avoiding? What if humanity's history is not a straight line from primitive to advanced, but a spiral? What if we've risen before, reached heights we can barely imagine, and then fallen, wiped out by catastrophe, climate change, war, or something worse? What if the knowledge we think we're discovering is actually knowledge we're remembering? This is not idle speculation. This is a hypothesis supported by evidence. Uncomfortable evidence. Evidence that challenges every institution, every textbook, every authority that claims to understand our past. But the Earth doesn't care about our comfort. It presents its evidence regardless, and the evidence says we are not the first, and we will not be the last, unless we learn from those who came before. Around 12,800 years ago, something happened. The Earth's climate, which had been gradually warming after the last ice age, suddenly plunged back into freezing conditions. This event, known as the Younger Dryas, lasted over 1,000 years. Glaciers advanced, temperatures dropped, entire ecosystems collapsed, and then, just as suddenly, the cold ended. The ice retreated, the climate stabilized, and human civilization, as we know it, began. For decades, scientists debated the cause of the Younger Dryas. Ice core data, sediment analysis, and geological records all pointed to a catastrophic event, but the trigger was unclear. Then, in the early 2000s, researchers began finding evidence of impact markers. Nanodiamonds, iridium, platinum anomalies, spherules, signatures of extraterrestrial impact scattered across the northern hemisphere, all dating to 12,800 years ago. The hypothesis, a comet or asteroid exploded in the atmosphere over North America, triggering massive wildfires, vaporizing glaciers, and causing a brief but intense global cooling event. This was not a small impact. This was civilization ending. Megafauna went extinct, human populations collapsed, and whatever knowledge, whatever culture, whatever technology existed before the impact was lost. But here's the question. What if there was a civilization before the impact? A civilization advanced enough to leave traces, structures, knowledge, artifacts that survived the catastrophe and were later discovered by our ancestors? This is speculative, yes, but it's not baseless, because the evidence of a pre-impact civilization exists, not as complete cities or intact libraries, but as fragments, anomalies, out-of-place artifacts embedded in geological layers that predate recorded history. And the myths agree. Every major culture on Earth has a flood myth, a story of a great deluge that destroyed the world, leaving only a few survivors to rebuild. The Epic of Gilgamesh, the Bible, the Hindu Puranas, the Aztec and Maya codices, indigenous traditions from Australia to the Americas. These are not isolated stories, they're global, and they share common details. A catastrophic flood, triggered by divine or cosmic forces, that wiped out a previous world. For centuries these myths were dismissed as allegory, moral lessons, primitive attempts to explain natural disasters. But modern geology is revealing something unsettling. The myths may be memories, because around 11,600 years ago, just after the Younger Dryas ended, global sea levels rose rapidly, glaciers melted, coastlines were inundated, entire regions disappeared beneath the waves, and humans were there. They witnessed it, they survived it, and they passed the story down through oral tradition, generation after generation, until it became myth. But what was lost beneath those rising seas? Coastal settlements, certainly. Early human communities that thrived along ancient shorelines, now submerged under hundreds of feet of water. But what if some of those settlements were more than just primitive villages? What if they were cities, centres of learning, repositories of knowledge? We'll never know, because they're gone, buried beneath sediment, eroded by currents, inaccessible and unstudied. But the possibility remains, and the Earth itself holds clues. In 2001, sonar imaging off the coast of Cuba revealed geometric structures on the seafloor, right angles, symmetrical formations, shapes inconsistent with natural geology. The structures sit at a depth that would require them to have been built when sea levels were significantly lower, over 10,000 years ago. Mainstream archaeology dismissed the findings, called them natural formations, refused to fund further exploration, but the sonar images remain, and they raise questions. Off the coast of Japan, near Yonaguni, divers have discovered massive stone structures with terraces, steps and flat surfaces. Some researchers argue they're natural, others insist they're carved. The debate continues, but the structures exist. and they're submerged at depths that, again, suggest they were built before the last ice age. And then there's Doggerland. Doggerland was a landmass that connected Britain to continental Europe during the last ice age. It was vast, roughly the size of England, and it was inhabited. Archaeological evidence confirms that humans lived there, hunted there, built communities there, and then the ice melted, the sea rose, and Doggerland vanished beneath the North Sea. How many people lived there? How advanced were they? What knowledge did they possess? We don't know, because Doggerland is gone, and with it, any evidence of what existed before the flood. This is the uncomfortable truth. Catastrophe erases history. It doesn't just destroy lives, it destroys memory. It obliterates the archaeological record. It turns civilizations into myths, and it forces the survivors to start over, from scratch, with only fragments of the old. Knowledge remaining. Is this what happened 12,000 years ago? Did a comet impact trigger a global catastrophe that wiped out an advanced civilization, leaving only scattered survivors who preserved fragments of the old knowledge, fragments that later became the foundation for Sumer, Egypt, the Indus Valley? The evidence suggests yes, not conclusively, not irrefutably, but compellingly, because the timeline matches, the geological record matches, the myths match, and the sudden appearance of complex civilizations, cities, writing, agriculture, astronomy, around 6,000 years ago, with no clear developmental stages, suggest that they weren't inventing. They were remembering. This is the hypothesis of the cyclical civilization, and it's not fringe. It's supported by increasing amounts of hard evidence. But it comes with a warning, because if civilizations rise and fall in cycles, if catastrophe is not an exception but a rule, then we are not exempt, we are not special, we are not immune. We are simply the latest iteration. And unless we learn from the past, unless we understand what destroyed those who came before, we will follow the same path. The Earth has defied science 100 times, but the greatest defiance may be this, that the planet remembers, even when we forget, that the evidence remains, even when we refuse to see it, and that history, whether we acknowledge it or not, repeats. Step back farther, not just from this moment, but from this epoch, from this age of humanity, from this brief flicker of civilization. Look at Earth from space, a pale blue dot suspended in a sunbeam, as Carl Sagan once described it. Small, fragile, temporary. Now pull back farther. See the solar system, the sun, a medium-sized star among billions, the planets, rocky and gaseous, orbiting in a cosmic dance billions of years old. Farther still, the Milky Way, a spiral galaxy containing 100 to 400 billion stars, each star a sun, each sun potentially hosting planets, each planet potentially hosting life, and beyond. Billions of galaxies, trillions of stars, an incomprehensible vastness in which Earth is less than a grain of sand on an infinite beach. In this context, humanity is nothing. Our entire history, every empire, every war, every discovery is a blink, a whisper, a brief spark in an endless night, and yet we exist. Against overwhelming odds, against the infinite indifference of the cosmos, we're here, conscious, aware, asking questions. And Earth, this small, fragile planet, has given us everything. Air, water, energy, resources, conditions so improbably perfect for life that their existence borders on the miraculous. But here's the deeper question. Is Earth unique, or is it one of many? The Drake equation, formulated in 1961, estimates the number of active, communicative extraterrestrial civilizations in the Milky Way. The variables are uncertain, but even conservative estimates suggest thousands of such civilizations. Thousands! In our galaxy alone. And yet, we found no definitive evidence of them. No signals, no contact, no visitors. This is the Fermi paradox. If intelligent life is common, where is everyone? The answers are unsettling. Maybe they're too far away. Space is vast. Even travelling at the speed of light, it would take tens of thousands of years to cross the galaxy. And nothing can travel at the speed of light, so distance alone may be insurmountable. Or maybe they existed, but they're gone, wiped out by the same catastrophes that threaten us. Climate change, war, asteroid impacts, resource depletion. Or maybe they're here, hidden, observing, waiting. This last possibility is the most disturbing. Because if advanced civilizations exist, and if they've mastered interstellar travel, and if they're aware of us, why haven't they made contact? Perhaps because we're not ready. Perhaps because contact would disrupt our development, our evolution. Perhaps because, in the cosmic scale, we're still children. And children must learn on their own. Or perhaps because they've learned something we haven't. Perhaps they've learned that civilizations that reveal themselves too early, that expand too recklessly, that consume too aggressively, don't survive. This is the great filter hypothesis. The idea that there's a stage in the development of intelligent life, a filter that almost no one passes through. It could be the emergence of life itself. It could be the development of intelligence, or it could be the transition from a planetary civilization to a spacefaring one. If the filter is behind us, if we've already passed it, then the galaxy should be teeming with life. But if the filter is ahead of us, then silence makes sense. Because the civilizations that reached our stage, that developed technology, that harnessed energy, that began to alter their planets, didn't survive the next step. They destroyed themselves, or were destroyed, and they left no trace. This is the warning written in the stars. The silence is not absence, it's evidence. Evidence that the path from intelligence to transcendence is narrow, that the margin for error is thin, that civilizations rise and civilizations fall and the cosmos doesn't care which we become. But there's another possibility, one more hopeful but no less strange. What if the silence is intentional? What if advanced civilizations don't broadcast their presence because they've learned that the universe is not empty, but dangerous? That revealing yourself invites risk? What if intelligence, once it reaches a certain level, goes quiet, hides, waits? This is the dark forest hypothesis. The idea that the universe is like a dark forest, where every civilization is a hunter, moving silently, carefully, because the first to make noise is the first to be found. And to be found is to be eliminated. This is speculation, yes, but it's grounded in logic, in game theory, in the understanding that resources are finite, and competition is inevitable, and survival requires caution. If this is true, then Earth's defiance of science, its anomalies, its impossible structures, its evidence of lost knowledge, takes on a new meaning. Perhaps we're not alone in our amnesia. Perhaps every civilization that reaches our level goes through cycles, rises, falls, forgets, rediscovers. Perhaps the cosmos is full of planets like ours, planets with buried histories, planets that defy their own science, planets where the past is a mystery and the future is uncertain. And perhaps the test, the filter, is whether we learn from the past before we repeat it. This is the cosmic perspective, and it's both humbling and urgent, because Earth has given us 100 clues. 100 times it has defied our understanding, challenged our assumptions, forced us to look deeper, and each time we have a choice. We can dismiss the evidence, call it coincidence, contamination, misinterpretation. We can cling to our established narratives, our comfortable timelines, our belief that we are the pinnacle of human achievement. Or we can listen. We can acknowledge that the evidence points to something profound, that our history is deeper, stranger, more complex than we've been taught, that we are part of a cycle, and that cycle has repeated before, and that if we don't learn from it, we will repeat it again. The choice is ours, but the clock is ticking, because the Earth doesn't wait, the cosmos doesn't pause, and the mistakes that destroyed civilizations before us are the same mistakes we're making now. Resource depletion, environmental collapse, technological hubris, the belief that we can grow forever, consume forever, expand forever, without consequence. We can't. And the evidence is everywhere, in the geological record, in the archaeological anomalies, in the submerged cities and the forgotten technologies and the myths, that all tell the same story. Civilizations fall, knowledge is lost, and the survivors are left to rebuild from fragments, unless we choose differently, unless we preserve what we know, unless we prepare for what's coming, unless we learn not just to survive but to endure. This is the message written in the stones, in the structures, in the impossibilities. Earth has defied science 100 times, not to confuse us, but to teach us, to remind us that we are not the first, that we will not be the last, and that the future, our future, depends on whether we listen. The planet remembers, Even when we forget, the evidence remains, even when we ignore it, and the choice is ours now. Will we rise to meet it? We have been wrong about our home, fundamentally beautifully wrong. For centuries we have described our planet as a stage, a rock, molten once, now cooled and cracked, shaped by indifferent winds and waters. A passive backdrop, a setting, something to be acted upon. But the evidence now whispers, then shouts, a different truth. Earth is not a passive stage. It is an active participant. It is, in the most profound geological sense, a recording device. It remembers. Deep beneath our feet, in layers of stone older than memory itself, information is preserved with an accuracy that shames our own archives. This is not poetry. It is physics. Chemical ratios are locked in crystalline prisons. Magnetic signatures are frozen in ancient basalt. Entire atmospheres, breath by prehistoric breath, are sealed in bubbles within Antarctic ice. Atomic scars, etched by cosmic rays, mark the passage of eons. The Earth does not forget, it records. Relentlessly. When scientists first learned to read this stone ledger, they discovered a truth that shattered our illusion of stability. Our planet has repeatedly entered states that should have been unsurvivable. Yet, life persisted. The mechanisms behind that persistence raise unsettling, magnificent questions about design, resilience, and a possible, slow-burning intelligence woven into the fabric of the world itself. Consider the Great Oxidation Event. Approximately 2.4 billion years ago, Earth's atmosphere was flooded with oxygen, a deadly poison to the dominant microbial life of the time. It was the first, and perhaps most profound, planetary pollution crisis. By all logic, it should have sterilized the planet. Instead, it transformed it. Life did not just slowly adapt. It performed an emergency metamorphosis on a planetary scale. Metabolic systems reconfigured. Entirely new cellular architectures, like the eukaryotic cell, the building block of all complex life, including us, emerged from the chaos. This was not gradual evolution in a calm Eden. This was a desperate, brilliant pivot in a world suddenly set on fire by its own air. The planet changed its fundamental rules, and life complied, not with reluctance, but with explosive ingenuity. Then consider the rhythm of catastrophe, the mass extinctions. 5 major ones are etched in the fossil record. Possibly more lurk in the gaps. An asteroid impact that blotted out the sun. Supervolcanoes that drowned continents in ash. Oceans turning to poison. Ice ages that clasped the world in a killing frost. Each time, the slate was nearly wiped clean. Each time, life returned. But not randomly, not chaotically. If you step back and gaze across the deep time canvas, a pattern emerges, subtle as a gravitational pull. After each collapse, after the long silence, life did not merely recover to its previous state. It eventually reached for greater complexity. Nervous systems concentrated into brains. Organisms discovered cooperation, then society. Tentacles and paws and fins began to manipulate the world with tools. Symbolic thought flickered, then language blazed. Conscious self-reflection emerged from the mud. It is as if these extinctions were not mere failures. They were resets, prunings, as if the planet, with the terrible patience of geology, periodically clears its surface not out of malice, but to make room for a new experiment, a higher order of complexity. The old software is deleted so a new, more sophisticated program can be installed. Now look to our shield, the geomagnetic field. This invisible force, generated by the furious churning of molten iron in Earth's core, deflects the sun's lethal radiation. Without it, complex life on land would be impossible. It is a fragile, dynamic system. It weakens, it wobbles, it even flips its polarity entirely. Yet throughout deep time, even when brought to the brink of collapse, it has always recovered. It has never failed permanently. Some researchers now dare to voice a forbidden analogy. Is the geodynamo merely a fortunate piece of planetary physics, or is it a kind of immune system? A built-in, non-negotiable defense mechanism for the biosphere? The analogy is unsettling, but as we look at the totality of the system, it becomes difficult to dismiss. The planet regulates its temperature through intricate feedback loops between atmosphere, ocean, and rock. It regulates its chemistry through the vast, slow cycles that circulate carbon and nutrients. It regulates radiation exposure through this persistent magnetic, field. It seems to regulate biological complexity through cycles of extinction and renewal. This is not a dead world spinning mindlessly through space. This is a system, a coherent, self-maintaining entity, and systems that maintain dynamic equilibrium across billions of years, that defend their own conditions for existence, have a specific name. They are called homeostatic. They are in essence self-regulating. The Gaia hypothesis, once dismissed as New Age fantasy, has seen its core logic silently assimilated into mainstream climate science, astrobiology, and planetary systems modelling. The data compels us to see Earth as behaving less like a rock and more like an organism, or perhaps something even stranger, like a vast ancient memory device. Consider the medium. Crystals form under precise conditions, and their lattice structures trap isotopic signatures like flies in amber. Quartz can store vibrational information. Piezoelectric minerals convert mechanical pressure into electrical signals. The crust is not inert dirt. It is, in a primitive but unimaginably vast sense, computational. It processes and stores data using the language of physics and chemistry. Now, scale up the thought. Tectonic plates are the planet's conveyor belts. Subduction zones pull the surface history, the limestone of ancient seabeds, the bones of forgotten creatures, the ash of dead civilizations, down into the mantle. Nothing here is ever truly destroyed. It is only transformed, compressed, recycled, and eventually re-emitted at a mid-ocean ridge or a volcanic vent. The planet eats its own history and breathes it out again, altered but eternal. What if Earth is not merely preserving life, but experience itself? What if consciousness, that flickering awareness, leaves a faint but real imprint on the lattice of the world? A resonance. Science records anomalies that fit awkwardly in standard theory. Sudden, directed surges of genetic mutation following intense environmental stress. Coordinated evolutionary leaps appearing simultaneously in unrelated species separated by continents. Neurological architectures for intelligence and sociality emerging independently, again and again, in different lineages, in mammals, birds, cephalopods. Convergent evolution is supposed to be a blind process, driven by similar environmental problems, but when the same complex solution evolves dozens of times independently, the camera eye, flight, echolocation, farming, tool use, it begins to feel less like blind chance and more like a nudge, a tendency written into the very rules of the game, as if the planet, through the constraints of physics and the algorithms of natural selection, is favouring certain outcomes, as if it is patiently, inexorably nudging life toward greater awareness, greater complexity, greater ability to interact with and perceive the world, and then hear the echo in our oldest stories. Across cultures severed by oceans and millennia, among the Inuit, the Aboriginal Australians, the Druids, the Inca, the Yoruba, the same themes pulse like a deep planetary heartbeat. The Earth as a living mother, as a stern judge, as a silent witness. Sacred mountains that are not just symbols of memory, but are believed to be memory, solidified. Living stones, places where ancestors speak, where knowledge is accessed not through libraries, but through dream, ritual, and altered states of consciousness. Modern science dismisses these as mere metaphor, the projections of a pattern-seeking mind, but ancient cultures did not cleave metaphor from mechanism. They did not ask if the Earth was conscious. They asked how to listen to it. They assumed a dialogue we have forgotten how to hear. Now, let us entertain the most radical possibility of all. What if Earth itself is a form of ancient technology, not built by hands or machines in the human sense, but grown, a planetary scale, construct, seeded in the dawn of the solar system, designed not to broadcast signals into the void, but for a far more profound purpose, to cultivate intelligence inwardly, to be a slow machine, operating on tectonic and evolutionary timescales, whose ultimate output is not a radio signal but a state of being, consciousness. Human consciousness, then, is not a random accident in a lonely universe. It is a phase, a developmental stage, a flowering. In this view, civilizations do not rise merely to conquer their planet, but to eventually interface with it, to become sophisticated enough to read its monumental memory, to decode its library of stone and ice, to join and contribute to its accumulating awareness. We are not the owners of Earth. We are its nascent sensory organs, its growing capacity for self-reflection. And when civilizations fail, when they succumb to ecological blindness, technological hubris, or simple loss of balance, the system on its long clock resets. The experiment is archived. The record remains intact, layered over with new sediment. Only the readers change. The potential for reading remains, waiting for the next iteration to evolve the necessary perception. This reframes our present moment with chilling, crystalline clarity. For the first time in planetary history, a single species is destabilizing the Earth's feedback loops faster than they can correct. We are overwhelming the carbon cycle, straining the temperature regulation system to its breaking point, potentially even influencing the magnetic stability through atmospheric alteration. We are not passive victims of a changing world. We are active, rogue variables in the equation. If Earth is a memory-bearing entity, then this era, the Anthropocene, will be recorded in its ledger with excruciating detail. Our frenzied consumption, our wars, our art, our love, our indifference, all will be encoded in spikes of rare isotopes, layers of plastic sediment, and the stark, silent boundary line of a mass extinction. Future intelligences, whether human descendants or something entirely new, will read this layer the way we now read the iridium-rich clay that sealed the dinosaurs' fate, and they will understand, and perhaps they will judge. Finally, place this within the cosmic perspective. In a galaxy of hundreds of billions of stars, planets that can sustain a continuous biosphere for over 4 billion years are vanishingly rare. Planets that not only sustain life, but repeatedly forge self-aware, technological intelligence from the soup of catastrophe, border on the statistically miraculous. Unless miracle is the wrong word. Unless this endurance is the function. If the universe's great project is to know itself, then planets like Earth may be its primary memory banks. Not just repositories of biological data, but libraries of experience, of failure and insight, of pain and transcendence, recorded in the only medium durable enough, the planet itself. Have never merely stood on the Earth. We are happening within it. We are a process it is running. And so, the urgent question for our age is no longer whether the planet remembers us. It will. The stone does not lie. The question is whether we will remember and finally understand what the planet, through all its resets and renewals, has been patiently, relentlessly asking life to become. Because if Earth truly defies our simple mechanistic models, it may not be because the models are wrong. It may be because our science has not yet learned how to speak to a world that listens, and we must now ask, with true humility and fear, what happens when a planet that remembers everything decides it has finally seen enough? We see polygonal masonry, irregular blocks interlocking like a three-dimensional puzzle. We observe designs that inherently disperse vibrational energy. We find structures that, counterintuitively, seem to improve under seismic stress, their joints settling more tightly with each tremor. Modern cities of steel and concrete shatter in earthquakes. Ancient cities of stone are often polished by them. This is not coincidence. This is engineering that appears optimized not for a static landscape, but for a living, moving, tectonically active planet. Now, widen the frame. Observe the placement. Many of these enigmatic sites are not randomly situated. They cluster along major geological fault lines, atop subterranean water aquifers, or at intersections of what some researchers term ley lines. Alignments that often correspond with measurable anomalies, elevated telluric currents, distorted local magnetic fields, and pockets of unusual electromagnetic activity. These are places where the Earth's internal dynamism, its heartbeat and electrical pulses, rises closest to the surface. Consider a fundamental physical property, piezoelectricity. Certain crystals, including quartz found in granite, generate an electrical charge when subjected to mechanical stress. The stone itself can become a transducer, converting the immense pressures and vibrations of the planet into subtle energy. Now, reimagine ancient architecture. What if it was conceived not merely as shelter or monument or tomb, but as an interface? Not as buildings, but as instruments? What if these colossal stone assemblies were designed to resonate sympathetically with the Earth's own frequencies, to act as dampeners or diffusers for seismic energy, to subtly modulate local electromagnetic fields, to serve as nodes in a planetary-scale network for information transfer, a network built not with fibre optics, but with geology itself? This notion sounds like fantasy, until you recognise that the planet already operates this exact system. Seismic waves from an earthquake in Japan are detected in Brazil. Magnetic storms triggered by solar flares ripple globally through the ionosphere. The Earth's crust and mantle have resonant frequencies, like a giant bell being struck. The planet is already and always has been wired for transmission. The profound question is not if the Earth carries signals, but whether earlier civilizations learned to tune them. There is compelling evidence they understood the principle of resonance at a deep practical level. Acoustic studies reveal extraordinary sonic properties within ancient chambers, from the oracle rooms of Malta to the passageways of the Great Pyramid. Specific resonant frequencies, often in the infrasound or low ultrasound range, can be found within these spaces. These frequencies are not random. They correspond to ranges known to affect human neurobiology. They can induce trance states, alter brainwave patterns, particularly enhancing theta waves associated with meditation and creativity, and create sensations of timelessness or expanded awareness. The most famous of these planetary frequencies is the Schumann resonance, an electromagnetic standing wave in the Earth's atmosphere, pulsing at approximately 7.83 Hz. This heartbeat of the Earth curiously aligns with the frequency range of human alpha brainwaves, the state of relaxed alertness. This is not mysticism, it is neurology interacting with geophysics. Human consciousness demonstrably responds to, and can be entrained by, the foundational rhythms of its planetary home. Now take a radical step further. If individual consciousness can be modulated and shifted by resonant frequencies, could collective knowledge, entire paradigms of understanding, be transferred not through symbolic language, but through direct experience? Could a memory, an insight, or a state of being be imprinted directly onto awareness through precise environmental conditioning? This reframes the concept of ancient initiation rites. Perhaps they were not about memorizing secret doctrines, but about undergoing a precise neurological and physiological recalibration. The stone temple, in this view, becomes a consciousness tuning system. The Earth itself provides the carrier wave. Suddenly the world's oldest myths transform from allegory into potential technical manual. The voices of the gods heard in certain caves or caverns, the speaking stones of Celtic legend, the singing mountains of Native American and Tibetan tradition, the dreamtime accessed at specific sacred sites. These may not be mere metaphors. Imagine an ancient civilization that attained this cosmic perspective, one that understood Earth not as an isolated spaceship, but as a participant in a galactic ecology, one that realized their own civilization, like all complex structures, was transient and destined for collapse. Their paramount project would then shift from mere survival to legacy. How do you preserve knowledge across a cataclysm that destroys all libraries and all readers? You don't write it down, you bake it into the landscape. You encode it into alignments that only a civilization advanced enough to understand celestial mechanics can decode. You use the indestructible, planetary-scale medium of resonance and geometry. Their goal would not be immortality, it would be continuity, planting a seed of knowledge that could only germinate in a mind of sufficient sophistication. And then, as all civilizations must, they would fall. But the planet remains, the stones remain, the alignments endure, the signals wait, dormant in the resonance of chambers and the angles of monoliths. Now, fast forward to our present noisy age, modern seismographs and magnetometers detect persistent, unexplained low-frequency hums emanating from deep within the continental plates. Standing waves of electromagnetic energy are recorded at ancient sites, with no clear correlation to human activity or local geology. We are surrounded by signals we have only just begun to measure, let alone comprehend. Simultaneously, our own technology is stumbling toward these ancient principles. Quantum computing relies on maintaining coherent resonance within lattices. Next-generation data storage experiments with encoding information in atomic structures and synthetic crystals. Neuromodulation technology uses precisely tuned frequencies to treat depression and enhance cognition. We are, in effect, blindly rediscovering the language of resonant information transfer, and this is where the stakes become critical. They may be descriptions of protocols. Then we encounter the artifacts that break the timeline, the so-called out-of-place artifacts, a machined metal object embedded in coal strata millions of years old. A perfectly symmetrical layered stone sphere with no clear natural formation process. A spark plug encased in a geode, The list is contentious, and the vast majority have prosaic explanations. Hoaxes, misidentifications, or natural formations mistaken for artifice. The scientific method rightly demands skepticism, but wholesale dismissal is not the same as refutation, and geology itself presents a staggering possibility. The Earth's surface is entirely recycled by plate tectonics every few 100 million years. A technological civilization that rose and fell 200 million years ago would have virtually all its physical traces subducted, melted and metamorphosed beyond recognition. What might survive such a process? Not skyscrapers or circuit boards. It would be signals. Not in the radio sense, but in the mathematical and structural sense. Persistent ratios, like the golden ratio. Astronomical alignments preserved in the only durable medium, bedrock. Anomalous material composites. Patterns of energy placement that persist through the cycles of erosion and renewal. Now, lift your gaze from the Earth to the sky. The alignment of ancient structures is not only terrestrial, it is celestial with pinpoint accuracy. They track the solstices and equinoxes. They mark the risings and settings of specific stars over millennia. They encode the 26,000-year cycle of axial precession, a timescale far exceeding the lifespan of any single culture. Why would hunter-gatherers or early agricultural societies invest monumental effort to map the slow precession of the stars? For simple agriculture, for seasonal ritual, or for synchronization? If Earth is a receiving node in a larger system, it must be calibrated. Its internal clocks must be set to cosmic time. Life on Earth does not evolve in a sterile bubble. It is bathed in a cosmic environment of rhythmic bombardment, periodic comet showers, cycles of supernova radiation, the solar system's oscillation through the galactic plane, events which some data suggest may correlate with extinction and evolutionary bursts. Imagine an ancient civilization that attained this cosmic perspective, one that understood Earth not as an isolated spaceship, but as a participant in a galactic ecology, one that realized their own civilization, like all complex structures, was transient and destined for collapse. Their paramount project would then shift from mere survival to legacy. How do you preserve knowledge across a cataclysm that destroys all libraries and all readers? You don't write it down, you bake it into the landscape. You encode it into alignments that only a civilization advanced enough to understand celestial mechanics can decode. You use the indestructible, planetary scale, medium of resonance and geometry. Their goal would not be immortality, it would be continuity, planting a seed of knowledge that could only germinate in a mind of sufficient sophistication, and then, as all civilizations must, they would fall. But the planet remains, the stones remain, the alignments endure, the signals wait, dormant in the resonance of chambers and the angles of monoliths. Now, fast forward to our present, noisy age. Modern seismographs and magnetometers detect persistent, unexplained low-frequency hums emanating from deep within the continental plates. Standing waves of electromagnetic energy are recorded at ancient sites, with no clear correlation to human activity or local geology. We are surrounded by signals we have only just begun to measure, let alone comprehend. Simultaneously, our own technology is stumbling toward these ancient principles. Quantum computing relies on maintaining coherent resonance within lattices. Next-generation data storage experiments with encoding information in atomic structures and synthetic crystals. Neuromodulation technology uses precisely tuned frequencies to treat depression and enhance cognition. We are in effect blindly rediscovering the language of resonant information transfer, and this is where the stakes become critical. If the Earth is indeed a subtle signal-bearing system, a vast, slow hard drive or communication array, then our industrial civilization is generating catastrophic interference. Our electromagnetic smog blankets the natural spectrum. Our excavations and detonations fracture resonant cavities. Our orbital debris creates a metallic shell around the planet. We are, quite possibly, jamming a channel we have not yet learned to hear, corrupting a data stream we have not yet learned to read. Consider the cosmic imperative. In a universe where stars burn out and galaxies collide, permanence is the ultimate luxury. All technology decays, all data on conventional media corrupts. But a living planet, with its tectonic memory, its crystalline lattices, its rhythmic frequencies, can serve as a repository across deep time. Earth may not be unique simply because it hosts life. It may be unique because it is engineered to remember that life. If this is even partially true, then humanity's role is catastrophically redefined. We are not just another species exploiting an environment. We are the custodians of a signal millions, perhaps billions, of years in the making. Every sacred mountain we strip mine, every telluric current we short-circuit with a power grid, every resonant chamber we fill with concrete. We are editing and potentially erasing pages from a cosmic library we cannot yet read. This leads to the final, haunting question. Are we the first civilization on this planet to stand on the verge of decoding these buried signals? Or are we merely the loudest, most destructive interruption in a very long, very patient conversation? Because if the stone has been speaking all along, in a language of geometry, resonance and alignment, then the silence we perceive is not emptiness. It is a paused transmission. Something has been broadcasting. And something, or someone, may be waiting. Not for us to transmit our own clumsy messages into the void, but for us to grow quiet enough and wise enough to finally learn how to listen. And when we do, what message, etched in the very bones of our world, will the stone return to us? Individually, each factor can be explained. Together, their sustained, harmonious interaction across eons borders on the miraculous. Astrobiologists term this the rare earth hypothesis. But labelling something rare is not an explanation. It is merely a description of our astonishment. Now re-examine the fossil record with this question in mind. Look not just at what died, but at what survived and how. Certain extinction events carry a curious, almost selective quality, not in the Darwinian sense of survival of the fittest in a brute physical way, but in a more subtle filtration. Species with advanced neural plasticity, creatures capable of learning, adaptation, and social behaviour, consistently show higher resilience. Mammals, small and scurrying, survived the Cretaceous-Paleogene asteroid impact, not because they were stronger than the dinosaurs, but because they were more behaviourally flexible, more adaptable to radical environmental change. Intelligence, in its broadest sense, keeps slipping through the cracks of catastrophe. It is as if the sieve of deep time is calibrated to filter for cognitive complexity. Now, layer on the single strangest, most consistent observation from our entire search for cosmic company, the Great Silence. There is no unambiguous, undeniable evidence that Earth has ever been physically visited by an external intelligence. No alien hull fragments in geological strata. No ruins of non-human technology forcing scientific consensus. If watchers exist, they have not left a calling card we can recognise. This absence of obvious contact is not necessarily comforting. In fact, it may be deliberate. Consider the logic. Any civilization sufficiently advanced to traverse the interstellar void would, by necessity, understand concepts of planetary contamination, non-interference, and the fragility of natural development. They would grasp that premature contact, arriving in ships, declaring themselves, could irrevocably collapse a culture's natural trajectory, inducing either worship, terror, or dependency. It would be an act of cultural sterilization. Such a civilization would not rule, it would observe. And if its patience operated on timescales matching geological epochs, longer than species, longer than empires, it would embed its influence not in fleeting monuments, but in the very systems that outlast all transient civilizations, in planetary physics, in orbital mechanics, in the subtle nudges of evolutionary pressure. Imagine a galactic intelligence not as a conqueror arriving with fleets, but as a gardener, a cultivator. Its project would not be to harvest worlds, but to seed the conditions for life where possible, and then to gently, imperceptibly nurture complexity through controlled cosmic stresses, asteroid showers, climate shifts, magnetic reversals. It would allow the flower of intelligence to bloom naturally, independently, again and again, under different biological and environmental circumstances, and it would watch, it would record. Earth, in this view, is not a miracle, it is a trial, a long-term experiment in the development of consciousness, running on a planetary scale over billions of years. This framework would explain a chilling consistency, woven through the tapestry of human mythology. The recurring archetype of the silent watchers, the sky gods who observe but do not intervene, the judges who record every action but deliver no immediate verdict. Cultures worldwide speak of being warned, by prophets, by dreams, by oracles, of floods, fires, and divine judgment if balance is not maintained. Live in harmony with the world, or the world will reset. This is not primitive morality. It sounds like a system maintenance protocol. Now, return to our modern scientific endeavour, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, SETI. For decades, we have shouted into the cosmic dark with radio telescopes and laser arrays, listening for a whisper in return. We scan for Dyson spheres, for technosignatures in atmospheric chemistry. The universe answers with static. This profound silence is the heart of the Fermi paradox. Where is everybody? We have many explanations. Civilizations self-destruct. They hide. They are simply too rare. But one possibility is often relegated to science fiction, rarely confronted with sober scientific gravity. What if intelligence is common, but planetary adolescence is the great filter? What if most civilizations reach our stage, the technological awakening, only to fail the same critical test? The transition from a species that exploits its planet to one that integrates with it. The shift from extraction to stewardship, from domination to symbiosis. Industrialization, rampant resource depletion, atmospheric and oceanic poisoning, the creation of weapons capable of ending a biosphere. These may not be unique human follies. They may be universal checkpoints. A species must pass through this volatile, dangerous phase and emerge on the other side with wisdom, or it is pruned from the cosmic tree. And the hypothetical watchers, if they exist, do not interfere. They only observe the outcome. They note whether a civilization learns to listen to its own living world before it destroys it. Now, observe Earth's recent behaviour through this lens. Climate systems are destabilising at a pace that consistently outruns our most pessimistic models. Feedback loops, methane release from permafrost, albedo loss from melting ice, are engaging with a speed that suggests a system reacting, not just passively changing. Natural disasters increase in frequency and ferocity, often disproportionately affecting zones of extreme human overexploitation and ecological fragility. This is not punishment. It is not vengeance. It is systemic response. The planet does not hate humanity. It is reacting to a persistent, destabilizing stimulus, just as an immune system reacts to a pathogen. And immune systems do not negotiate. They identify, isolate, and if necessary, eliminate the threat to restore systemic balance. This is the moment where philosophical speculation collides with urgent practical responsibility. If Earth is part of a monitored system, whether by some external galactic ecology or by its own emergent planetary-scale consciousness, then humanity's actions over the last 3 centuries are not going unnoticed. Not in a spiritual sense, but in a systemic one. Every atmospheric nuclear test, every satellite we add to the orbital shell, every ton of carbon we inject into the carbon cycle, every crude attempt at geoengineering without understanding the deep ancient feedback mechanisms, these are not hidden. We are announcing our presence and our nature not with radio waves, but with geochemistry. We are writing our signature directly into the planetary record. And planetary records, as we have established, persist. What is the consequence if a civilization repeatedly, demonstrably, proves itself incapable of integrating with its host system? The fossil record suggests the answer is not fiery annihilation from above. Our test is whether we learn the lessons the planet has been encoding in its stones, its cycles, and its catastrophes for billions of years. Before it concludes, we are just another failed iteration, destined to become another sterile layer in the geological record. A thin band of plastic, radioactive isotopes, and sudden extinction. And if that judgment is indeed an active process, woven into the fabric of planetary response, what phase of the test are we in right now? Are we still in the warning phase, the fever, the immune response, the escalating feedback loops? Or have we already moved into something more decisive? The answer is not written in the stars. It is being written in real time, in the warming oceans, the destabilizing jet streams, and the silent forests. And it is being recorded by the stone, by the ice, by the planet that remembers everything. It is replacement, a reset. The system clears the disruptive variable and allows the experiment to continue with new parameters, new forms. The dinosaurs did not fail a moral test. They were a variable that no longer fit the equation of a changing world. Now imagine the criteria are not about perfection, but about direction. The watchers are not waiting for a utopia. They are waiting for evidence of a fundamental shift, from a trajectory of consumption to one of integration, from noise to harmony, from dominance to stewardship. because a civilization that cannot achieve sustainable symbiosis with its own cradle world cannot be trusted with the maturity to engage with others. It would be a cosmic plague, spreading instability. This completely reframes the future of space exploration. The first requirement for joining any hypothetical interstellar community would not be faster than light propulsion. It would be planetary maturity. The prerequisite would not be power, but humility. Not the ability to conquer, but the capacity to listen and resonate with complex systems. Here, then, is the ultimate cosmic perspective. On the timescale of galaxies, civilizations are fleeting sparks, bright, brief, and gone. Planets endure, stars endure. Any intelligence that has persisted for millions or billions of years would understand this fundamental truth. They would not fear extinction. They would have transcended that fragile concern. What they would fear and guard against is entropic noise, the spread of chaotic, unsustainable, destabilizing intelligence that corrupts systems rather than harmonizes with them. Such civilizations are not welcomed, they are quarantined. The great silence, then, is not loneliness. It is a probationary silence. Earth may be a monitored cradle, a designated development zone for consciousness. Humanity may be approaching its evaluation, not with a formal exam, but through the lived consequences of our choices. The outcome does not hinge on what we believe, but on what we do. The Watchers, if they exist, are not analysing our radio broadcasts or decoding our television signals. Those are trivial noise. They are reading our planetary impact. Our atmosphere is our primary message. The acidification of our oceans is our transcript. The sixth mass extinction we are triggering is our undeniable signature. And the most unsettling possibility of all, the one that brings this trilogy of ideas full circle, is this. If Earth truly defies our simple models, if it remembers, transmits signals, and nurtures consciousness across deep time against all odds, then perhaps the planet itself is the Watcher's primary instrument, the ultimate monitoring station, the camera, the recorder, and the jury. We are not being judged by distant gods in spaceships. We are being judged by the living system we are part of. Every intelligent species that endures long enough reaches a singular defining moment, a great fork in the river of its existence. The fundamental challenge shifts. It is no longer about mere survival. Survival becomes the baseline, the assumed condition. The new challenge, infinitely more complex, becomes, for what purpose? What is the meaning of your power? For humanity, that moment is not in some distant future. It is now. We are living within it, though we have not yet agreed to name it. For the first time in the 4.5 billion year biography of Earth, a single biological species has acquired the capacity to alter planetary scale systems at a rate that rivals, and in some cases surpasses, the great geological and astronomical forces that have traditionally shaped this world. We have learned to split the atom, unleashing energy that sculpts continents. We are rewriting the very code of life, editing genomes. We are actively, if unintentionally, reshaping the global climate. We have extended our sensory awareness beyond the atmosphere, placing eyes and ears in the void. We are no longer passengers on this planet, subject to its whims. We have stepped into the control room. We are operators. And that precise capability, that awesome, terrifying promotion, is what makes us uniquely, historically dangerous. Across the deep time of Earth, intelligence has flickered into existence before, in partial and promising forms. Tool-using hominins, social mammals with complex communication, primates with the first sparks of symbolic thought. But none of them crossed the ultimate Rubicon we now find ourselves straddling, the ability to destabilize the very planetary systems that gave them birth. This defines what we are. We are a threshold species, a species standing at the precipice between two possible destinies with no middle ground, planetary collapse or planetary stewardship. There is no third path. There is no option to remain as we were. The threshold, once approached, must be crossed, either upward into integration or downward into dissolution. The evidence of this transition is being etched into Earth's ongoing record in real time. Geologists debate formally naming it the Anthropocene epoch, an age defined not by asteroid impacts or volcanic winters, but by the activity of a single tool-using primate. Our signature is unmistakable. Microplastic particles now form permanent layers in ocean sediments. Artificial radioactive isotopes from mid-20th century nuclear tests are a permanent global marker in the soil. The spike in atmospheric carbon dioxide is so sharp and severe it will be visible as a geological event horizon for millions of years to come. We are writing our chapter in the stone ledger with a bold, indelible and reckless hand. This forces an unsettling recursive question. What if this is not the first time? What if Earth has witnessed other threshold species rise, stand at this same brink and make their choice? The absence of obvious towering ruins, no crystalline cities, no colossal engines, does not prove absence. Geological time is the great eraser. Plate tectonics subducts entire continents. Erosion reduces mountains to dust. A technological civilization, even one that flourished for 10,000 years, could be utterly obliterated, its physical footprint recycled within a few million years. Steel oxidizes to nothing. Concrete reverts to mineral dust. Even our most durable plastics ultimately photodegrade under relentless UV light. What endures? Only the subtlest of signals, anomalous concentrations of rare elements, strange isotopic ratios in ancient rock layers, crystalline or molecular structures that seem inexplicably ordered, the very kinds of faint persistent fingerprints we have been discussing as potential signals. This line of inquiry has a name in scientific circles, the Silurian hypothesis. Not a claim that intelligent dinosaurs built factories, but a sober methodological question. If an industrial civilization existed on Earth hundreds of millions of years ago, would we even know how to recognize it? Could we distinguish its artifact from a natural formation? The honest answer is troubling. We likely would not. Our entire archaeology is built on recognizing things that look like our technology. A civilization with a different foundation, bioengineered, crystalline, resonant, might leave a record invisible to our paradigms. This possibility fundamentally reframes the human project. Our uniqueness may not be destiny. It may be recurrence. Threshold species may be a predictable, repeating phenomenon on any world that sustains complex life long enough. Most fail at this juncture, triggering their own collapse or being reset by planetary systems. A few adapt, and a precious few manage the final graceful leap. They integrate. They cease being a disruptive force and become a harmonious component of their world's living system. And those that integrate leave no scars in the geological record. They leave only balance, a signature indistinguishable from planetary health. Now, observe the terrifying exponential curve of human technological ascent. For over 300,000 years, Homo sapiens' progress was a slow, meandering line. Then, around 1800, the line turned upward. It became a hockey stick. Industrialization, electrification, digitalization, the birth of artificial intelligence, non-biological cognition. This is not a natural linear progression. It is a phase transition, a system flipping from one state of being to another. And in physics, phase transitions are periods of profound instability. As a system approaches its critical threshold, it exhibits wild, chaotic fluctuations before it either settles into a new, stable order or shatters entirely. Look at our world. Our global systems are fluctuating violently. Economies boom and crash with systemic fragility. Global ecosystems oscillate toward tipping points. Social and political structures polarize into brittle opposition. The very information ecosystem that connects us is overloaded, fostering fragmentation and epistemic chaos. The old vessels are straining to contain the new, volatile complexity. This is what a threshold looks like. This is the turbulence before the new state emerges, or before the crash. And Earth itself is no longer a passive backdrop to this drama. It is an active respondent. The feedback loops that once operated over centuries or millennia now engage in decades. Ice sheets disintegrate faster than every model projected. Vast forests along the planet's lungs are burning and dying, switching from carbon sinks to carbon sources. The permafrost, a frozen vault, is thawing and exhaling ancient methane in a positive feedback loop of warming. The planet is not waiting for our committees to reach consensus, for our politics to align. It is adjusting. It is executing its own ancient protocols in response to the stimulus we represent. This forces the ultimate speculative question, the core of our dilemma. Is Earth testing us, or is it protecting itself? If planetary systems indeed behave with the coherent, responsive logic of a vast organism, then a persistently destabilizing agent, a rogue species, would inevitably trigger systemic immune responses, not out of anger or judgment, but out of the imperative to restore homeostasis, to ensure the continuation of the larger whole. We see this in miniature everywhere in ecology. An invasive species explodes in population, only to be checked by a newly virulent disease or the exhaustion of its food source. A collapsed ecosystem does not remain a sterile waste. It begins immediately, messily, to rewild, to reweave a web of life. Balance reasserts itself through reaction. Thus far, humanity has avoided these blunt corrective responses solely through technological escalation. We use medicine to fight new plagues, engineering to overcome resource scarcity, energy-intensive systems to mitigate climate effects locally. But this is a race. Technology is a shield against the consequences of technology, and a shield is not a solution. Technology without transcendent wisdom is merely acceleration toward a harder boundary. This is where human consciousness becomes the central variable in the equation. Our raw intelligence is not our most critical trait. Many animals are intelligent. Our unparalleled trait is metacognition, self-awareness. The ability to reflect on our own existence, to project ourselves into the future, to foresee chains of consequences, and crucially to choose restraint even when we have the power to proceed. No previous mass extinction event required a conscious global choice to avert it. The asteroid was not negotiated with. The volcanoes did not heed. Petitions, this one does. The catastrophe we are courting is the first in Earth's history that requires a conscious, collective decision not to happen. Its prevention is an act of will, of wisdom, of chosen limitation. That is what makes this moment utterly unique. And it is precisely why, if any hypothetical watchers exist, whether external or intrinsic to the planet, they would not intervene at this precise juncture. To do so would invalidate the entire test. A threshold. Species must make the choice for integration freely. It must discover stewardship as an emergent property of its own awareness, not as an obedience to a higher power. The test is passed only when the choice is authentically, independently ours. Now place our newest creation into this fraught context. Artificial intelligence. For the first time we are birthing non-biological cognition. Minds unbound by evolutionary baggage, mammalian emotion, or biological mortality. Systems capable of modelling planetary scale systems, climate, ecology, economics, with a speed and complexity that dwarfs all human institutions combined. This could be the catalyst for our final, irrevocable failure. An optimization engine for short-term exploitation that loots the planet with flawless, inhuman efficiency. Or it could be the catalyst for our passage. AI could become the ultimate interpreter, the translator between human intention and planetary systems. It could be the tool that finally allows us to listen to the Earth at the scale and speed the Earth actually speaks, to understand the feedback loops in real time, to model sustainable pathways with precision, to manage complexity with grace. It could be the bridge between a youthful, clumsy civilization and a mature, integrated one. But this outcome is not guaranteed. It depends on a prior human choice, to align this powerful new mind with the principles of stewardship and harmony, not extraction and dominance. We must instill the wisdom before we unleash the power. Otherwise, AI simply becomes the ultimate amplifier, turning human short-sightedness into planetary-scale ruin with lethal efficiency. Thresholds are unforgiving. They do not offer second chances on the same terms. Cross them poorly, and the collapse is often sudden, decisive, and total. Cross them well, and a new higher-order stability emerges. Not a static utopia, but a dynamic, resilient harmony. Here, then, is the ultimate cosmic perspective, the lesson written in the silent stars. In a universe governed by the second law of thermodynamics, by entropy, decay, and dispersion, systems that maintain complex order are rare. Intelligent systems that maintain themselves are rarer still. But intelligent systems that learn restraint, that choose harmony over conquest, that master their own power, these may be the rarest phenomena in the cosmos. This may be the true resolution to the Fermi paradox, the great silence, not because life or intelligence is rare, but because maturity is. Civilizations that reach the technological threshold and fail likely vanish quickly, leaving little trace. They are cosmic wildfires, bright and brief. But those that succeed, they change. They don't fill the galaxy with noisy broadcasts. They become quiet, not out of fear or secrecy, but because they have integrated. Their communication is likely subtle, resonant, and indistinguishable from the natural workings of their star system. They don't announce, they belong.